When you grow old, 5 types of relatives to keep your distance from, especially the 5th type. What if I told you that some of the people closest to you, your own family, are the very ones who silently sabotage your happiness? Not with obvious betrayal, not with outright cruelty, but with small, insidious actions that drain your energy, cloud your peace, and leave you questioning yourself. The worst part, you may not even realize it's happening, until the damage is already done. As we grow older, life grants us one undeniable truth: peace is priceless. We no longer have the patience for unnecessary drama, manipulation, or hidden resentment. Our time, our emotional well-being, our very sense of self becomes too valuable to waste on people who bring nothing but stress and negativity. And yet, some relatives, the ones we trust the most, are the very ones who disrupt this peace, whether intentionally or not. But here's what they don't expect: awareness is power. The moment you recognize these patterns, you take back control. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which 5 types of relatives you need to keep your distance from, especially the last one, because trust me, they are the most dangerous of all. So before we dive in, take a second to like this video, subscribe, and let's get started. 1. The emotional leech. There's an old parable from ancient China about a wise sage who lived on the outskirts of a bustling village. People traveled from far and wide to seek his wisdom, but one visitor, a man burdened by endless complaints, came every single day. He spoke of how the world was unfair, how fate had wronged him, how no one understood his struggles. For months, the sage listened patiently, never interrupting. Then one evening, as the man launched into his usual grievances, the sage rose and walked to a nearby stream. He dipped his hands into the cool water, cupped them, and then let the water slip through his fingers. The man watched, puzzled. "Do you see this water?" the sage asked. "It flows freely. It does not complain of the rocks in its way. It does not mourn the land it cannot reach. It simply moves forward." The man frowned. "But that doesn't change my problems." The sage smiled. "Your complaints are like trying to hold water in your hands. Useless. The more you focus on them, the less peace you have. Let them go, and you will flow as freely as this stream." The lesson? Negativity is an endless trap. The more you hold on to it, the more it drains you. But if you learn to release it, to step away from those who drown you in their pessimism, you regain the ability to move forward light and free. I've lived a long life, 83 years to be exact, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: some people will find a problem for every solution. I had an old friend named Walter. We met when we were both young men, fresh out of the military. Walter was sharp, hardworking, and full of ambition, but there was one thing about him that never changed: he was never satisfied. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, we were young, and life had its struggles. But as the years passed, I noticed a pattern. If the sun was shining, Walter would complain about the heat. If it rained, he'd grumble about the dampness. If he got a promotion at work, he'd be upset that the taxes would take a chunk of his raise. It didn't matter how good life was, Walter always found a way to make it miserable. Now, I believed in loyalty. I figured if a friend is going through a tough time, you stick by them. So I listened. For years, I listened. Through his failed marriages, which were always the wife's fault according to him, his business failures, blamed on the economy, never his choices, and his lonely holidays, which of course were because people just don't care anymore. But the real moment of clarity came one evening when we were sitting on my porch. It was a beautiful autumn night, the kind where the air is crisp but not too cold, and the sky stretches wide and golden as the sun sets. I took a deep breath and said, "Walter, isn't it something? The way the seasons change, how the world just keeps turning no matter what happens." Walter shook his head. Yeah, but you know what's going to happen. Winter, and winter means frozen pipes, bad roads, and sky-high heating bills. I remember staring at him, feeling something shift inside me. I realized at that moment that Walter had become a prisoner of his own mind. He had spent decades complaining, and where had it gotten him? Alone, bitter, unhappy, and worse, he was dragging me down with him. I started to notice something. After spending time with Walter, I felt drained. My own problems, which had once seemed manageable, suddenly felt heavier. My usual optimism turned to frustration, And even though I'd been blessed with good health, a loving family, and a warm home, spending time with Walter made me feel like life was a burden rather than a gift. One day I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't cut him off completely, no, that's not my way, but I set boundaries. When he started complaining, I'd steer the conversation elsewhere. If he insisted on negativity, I'd make an excuse to leave, and slowly something amazing happened. I felt lighter. It was as if I had been carrying a heavy coat of someone else's misery, and the moment I took it off, I could finally breathe. Walter never changed. He kept complaining, kept blaming the world for his problems, but something inside me had changed. I stopped letting his negativity poison my own life, and you know what I realized? Some people don't want solutions, they just want to complain, and those people, you have to keep your distance from them. If you're watching this and someone's face immediately came to mind, maybe it's a relative, a lifelong friend, or even a sibling, you need to ask yourself, is this person adding to my life, or are they slowly draining my happiness? Because life is too short to be weighed down by someone else's misery. It doesn't matter if they're family, it doesn't matter how long you've known them, if every interaction leaves you feeling drained, stressed, or hopeless, you owe it to yourself to create distance. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone like this in your life? Someone who, no matter what, always found something to complain about? Share your story in the comments below. I truly believe that we learn best from each other's experiences. And if this message resonated with you, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe, because in this stage of life, we deserve peace. And it starts with choosing who we let into our hearts. Let's talk about it. 2. The Master Manipulator. In the 4th century BCE, Aristotle wrote about a peculiar kind of person, the one who criticizes under the guise of wisdom. He warned that a fool tells you what you cannot do, a wise man tells you what you can. The difference? Intent. The philosopher Confucius had a similar warning. A superior man is modest in his speech but exceeds in his actions. A petty man speaks much but does little. Throughout history, sages have pointed out a universal truth. Some people don't build, they tear down. Not because they care, not because they wish to help, but because diminishing others makes them feel bigger. And the worst part? They don't attack outright. No, they're far too clever for that. Instead, they hide behind words like, "I'm just trying to help." They disguise their insults as advice, making sure their criticism stings just enough to plant doubt, but not enough to be called out. But make no mistake, their goal isn't to help. Their goal is control. I was 12 years old the first time I met my Uncle George. My mother never spoke much about him, only that he traveled a lot. When he did visit, he always arrived unannounced, as if he enjoyed catching people off guard. That first evening I remember sitting at the dinner table, nervously trying to eat my soup as he watched me. "You hold your spoon funny," he said suddenly. "That's not how a man eats. Makes you look weak." I stopped mid-bite. "You don't want to seem weak, do you?" he added with a smirk, sipping his wine. I didn't respond, but I remember how my fingers tensed around the spoon. That was Uncle George's way. He never raised his voice, never outright insulted, but every interaction with him left you feeling smaller than before. He would make a passing remark about how I walked, how I laughed, how I spoke, always casual, always with a smirk, and always followed by, "I'm just trying to toughen you up." As I got older, his criticisms grew sharper. At 17, when I got my first job at the local hardware store, I was proud to tell him. His response? "A hardware store? Ha! I figured you'd go for something easier. You've never been the hard-working type." It didn't matter what I did. When I joined the military, he called it running away. When I got married, he said I'd never be strong enough to hold a family together. When I bought my first house, he scoffed, "It's cute, guess you don't need much." And yet, if you asked him, he would swear up and down that he was just being honest. I only say these things because I care. But let me tell you something. Caring doesn't make you feel like you're drowning in self-doubt. Caring doesn't break you down. Yet for years, I spent my 20s trying to prove him wrong. I worked harder, pushed further, and second-guessed every decision, as if he were some sort of expert on life. And that's what manipulators like him count on, that you will exhaust yourself trying to gain their approval, an approval they will never give. Because it was never about me, it was about control. The realization hit me in my mid-30s when my daughter was born one afternoon. Uncle George visited unannounced as usual. He watched as I held my newborn daughter, a soft smile on my face, and then, as if on cue, he smirked. "A daughter, huh? Hope she doesn't grow up soft like you." And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I looked at him and saw him for what he truly was. A man who had built nothing, achieved nothing, and found his only joy in making others feel as empty as he did. I stood up, looked him in the eye, and said, "You know what, George? You've never had a kind word to say in your life. Maybe that's why no one's ever around to listen." He blinked. For once, he had no words. That was the last time I ever let his words touch me. Now that I'm older, I see things clearly. Manipulators don't need to yell. They don't need to raise their fists. Their greatest weapon is a whisper disguised as concern. And the more you listen, the more you lose yourself. If you're watching this and someone's face just flashed in your mind, a relative, a sibling, maybe even a parent, ask yourself, have their words ever truly helped you, or have they just made you feel smaller? Because I'll tell you a secret. Real advice builds, it doesn't destroy. A person who truly cares will say, "I believe in you," not, "You'll never be good enough." And if you find yourself constantly shrinking around someone, maybe it's time to step away. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with someone like this, someone who claimed they were just being honest, but their words chipped away at your confidence? Share your story in the comments below. I believe we learn best from each other's experiences. And trust me, you're not alone. And if this message resonated with you, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe, because at this stage in life we deserve to be around people who lift us up, not those who tear us down. 3. The opportunist. In ancient Rome, the philosopher Seneca warned about the dangers of one-sided relationships. He wrote, "A friendship that can end was never real." He wasn't talking about ordinary friendships that drift apart, but rather people who only stay in your life for what they can take. There's an old fable, too, one you may have heard before, about a scorpion and a frog. The scorpion asks the frog to carry him across a river. The frog hesitates, knowing scorpions sting. But the scorpion promises, "I wouldn't sting you. If I did, we would both drown." Midway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog. As they both begin to sink, the frog gasps, "Why? Now we'll both die." The scorpion shrugs, "I can't help it, it's my nature." The lesson? Some people take not because they need to, but because it's simply who they are. They don't care if it hurts you. They don't care about loyalty or fairness. They only care about themselves. And the sooner you recognize an opportunist, the sooner you can stop yourself from drowning alongside them. I've had my fair share of disappointments in life. But if there's one thing that stings the most, it's realizing that someone you love never truly cared about you. They only cared about what you could give. I had a cousin named Eddie. Growing up, we were as close as brothers. We rode our bikes together, got into trouble together, and swore we'd always have each other's backs. But as the years passed, something changed. I started noticing a pattern. Eddie would disappear for months, sometimes years, and then, out of nowhere, my phone would ring. "Hey, buddy, been thinking about you. How's the family?" And before I could answer, there it was, the favor. Listen, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a situation. At first I told myself he really needed help. Life's hard after all, so I lent him money. I gave him a place to stay when he was struggling. I even co-signed a loan for him once, but every single time, without fail, once he got what he wanted, he vanished. No calls, no check-ins, just silence, until, of course, the next time he needed something. The last time he called me, I was 65 years old. My wife had just passed, and I was struggling with the silence in the house. Eddie, of course, didn't know this. He hadn't checked in. He hadn't even come to the funeral. But there he was on the phone, cheerful as ever. "Cousin, you won't believe it. I found a great business opportunity. But I need a little investment, and you're the only one I trust." Something inside me snapped. I thought about all the times I had been there for him, all the times I picked up the phone when he needed me, and all the times I had needed someone, and he was nowhere to be found. So I said, "I can't help you this time." Silence, then a forced laugh. "Oh, no worries, buddy. Just figured I'd ask." That was the last time I ever heard from Eddie, and you know what? It didn't hurt like I thought it would, because in that moment, I saw him for what he was, a scorpion on my back, and I was finally done drowning for him. I share this story because I know I'm not the only one who's been used by someone they trusted. It might be a cousin, a sibling, even a child, or a lifelong friend. But here's the truth that took me decades to learn. A relationship built on convenience, isn't a relationship at all. And the hardest thing? Letting go of the hope that they'll change. Because they won't. Not unless life forces them to. So if someone only calls when they need something, start saying no without guilt. And if they disappear afterward, good. That means you were only a resource to them, not a loved one. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone like this in your life? Someone who only remembered you when they needed something? Drop a comment below and share your story. I believe there's wisdom in shared experience. Let's talk about it. And if this message resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because at this stage in life, we deserve real relationships, not transactional ones. 4. The silent saboteur. The philosopher Socrates once warned, "Envy is the ulcer of the soul. It festers, corrodes, and eats away at a person from the inside, making them resent the happiness of others rather than pursuing their own." Similarly, in the ancient fable of Cain and Abel, Cain's jealousy of his brother's favor led him to commit the ultimate betrayal, not because Abel had wronged him, but because Cain couldn't stand seeing someone else succeed where he had failed. This is the nature of envy. It has nothing to do with fairness or justice. It is not about what you have done, but what they feel they are missing. And the most dangerous thing about envious people? They rarely show their hatred outright. They don't attack with knives or fists. They attack with insincere smiles, backhanded compliments, and subtle sabotage. I learned about envy the hard way, and the lesson nearly cost me my family. Growing up, my younger brother Tommy was my shadow. Wherever I went, he followed. Whatever I did, he tried to do better. At first, it was innocent. If I won a race, he'd practice harder. If I built a treehouse, he'd build a bigger one. It was a kind of healthy competition, the kind that made us both better, but something changed when we became adults. While I worked my way through college, Tommy struggled to keep a job. While I built my business, he jumped from one idea to another. And while I finally settled into a stable life, Tommy was always one step behind, never quite getting what he wanted. I never thought much of it until the comments started. "Must be nice, huh? Having everything handed to you? Some of us don't get lucky breaks like you did." At first, I laughed them off. Tommy had always been competitive, right? Maybe this was just his way of dealing with things. But then, strange things started happening. I'd hear rumors, whispers that my business wasn't as successful as people thought, that I had connections helping me behind the scenes, that I had cheated my way to success. And the worst part? The rumors always seemed to start with Tommy. I confronted him one day, sitting across from him at my kitchen table. "Tommy, be honest with me. Why do you say these things?" He looked away, pretending to be confused. "What things?" he asked. "You know what I'm talking about," I said. "The rumors, the little comments, the way you always find a way to make my success seem like an accident." For a moment his face twisted, just for a second. But then he forced a laugh. "Relax," he said. "I'm just messing with you. Can't you take a joke?" But it wasn't a joke. Not to him. Not to me. And I realized right then and there that my brother wasn't competing anymore. He was sabotaging. Because deep down, he wasn't angry at me. He was angry at himself. It took me years to accept the truth. Tommy didn't want me to fail. He just couldn't stand that I had succeeded without him, and so he did the only thing he could. He tried to make me doubt myself, to make others doubt me, to make me feel guilty for something I had worked hard to build. That's what envious people do. They won't cheer when you win. They'll sit in the stands and say, "Well, the game was rigged anyway." They won't acknowledge your struggles. They'll roll their eyes and say, "Must be nice to have it easy." And they won't support you in your happiness, because your happiness is a reminder of their own misery. The hardest thing I ever did was distance myself from my own brother, not because I stopped loving him, but because I had to accept a truth that most people don't want to face. Not everyone in your family is rooting for you. Some are waiting for you to fail. Some will never forgive you for succeeding, and some will do everything they can to make sure you never feel at peace with what you've achieved. If you're watching this and someone's face just popped into your mind, listen to that voice in your gut. You don't owe anyone an apology for working hard. You don't have to downplay your success to make someone else comfortable, because the truth is, real love celebrates. It doesn't resent. It doesn't undermine, and it sure as hell doesn't try to sabotage. So my advice? Protect your happiness. Keep your success quiet around those who can't handle it. And most of all, stop apologizing for being proud of what you've built. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an envious family member? Someone who smiled to your face but secretly wished you would fail? Drop your story in the comments below, because I guarantee you're not alone. And if this message spoke to you, hit that like button and subscribe, because in this stage of life we deserve peace, not jealousy. 5. The dangerous one. The Roman statesman Cicero once wrote, "Nothing is more dangerous to the soul than a friend who covets what is yours." And in ancient Greece, Euripides warned that envy and desire, when left unchecked, turn even the closest of kin into rivals. There's a story from medieval times about a nobleman who hosted his younger cousin in his home. The cousin, handsome and charming, befriended the nobleman's wife, showering her with attention under the guise of family closeness. The nobleman at first dismissed his concerns. Surely his own blood wouldn't betray him. But betrayal doesn't always announce itself. It seeps in quietly, in lingering glances, in shared jokes whispered in the corner of a room, in the way one person always seems to find reasons to be alone with another. By the time the nobleman confronted the truth, his family was already broken. This is the danger of misplaced trust. It blinds you until the damage is done, and I learned that lesson the hard way. I was married to my wife Eleanor for 42 years. She was my rock, my best friend, my safe place in a world that often felt too loud, too fast, too unpredictable. And then there was my brother, Raymond. Raymond was the golden child, the one who charmed a room the second he walked in. Women adored him, men wanted to be him. He was always the center of attention, always the one with the best jokes, the best stories, the best smile. I loved him, but I also knew him. I had seen him take what wasn't his before. It started subtly, a compliment here, a lingering look there. He would call Eleanor just to check in when I wasn't home. When we hosted family gatherings, he would hover, offering to help in the kitchen, finding reasons to stand just a little too close. At first I ignored it. He was my brother, after all. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things, but the truth doesn't go away just because you refuse to see it. One night I woke up in the middle of the night and found Eleanor sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. I knew something was wrong. After a long silence, she said, "Raymond makes me uncomfortable." Those 5 words hit me like a hammer. Not because I didn't know, but because I had spent years pretending I didn't. The next morning I confronted Raymond. He laughed. "Oh, come on, you're being ridiculous." I didn't blink. "Eleanor doesn't feel comfortable around you. That's not a joke." His face changed then. Just for a second. He tried to recover, but I had seen it. Guilt. I took a step closer. "Tell me the truth, Ray. Have you ever crossed a line?" He didn't answer, and sometimes silence is louder than words. I didn't need to hear him say it. I already knew. I told him to stay away. And for the first time in his life, Raymond didn't argue. Raymond never admitted what he had done or what he had almost done. But he didn't have to. Over time, I realized the truth wasn't in what he said. It was in what he didn't say, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he never again cracked his usual jokes around Eleanor, the way he stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped acting like the brother I had once idolized. Some might say I overreacted, that nothing really happened. But let me tell you something. Infidelity doesn't start with a kiss. It starts with a boundary being blurred, ignored, erased. And if I had continued ignoring it, if I had dismissed my wife's discomfort, if I had let it fester unspoken, I could have lost everything. Raymond was family, but family isn't an excuse for betrayal. I share this story because I know I'm not the only one who has seen this happen. Maybe it was a cousin, maybe an in-law, maybe even a best friend. But I'll tell you this, when your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. You don't have to wait until the damage is irreversible. You don't have to explain yourself to people who don't respect the boundaries of marriage. Because in the end, the people who truly love you won't put you in a position to question their loyalty. So if you've ever been in a situation like this, where someone close to you crossed a line they never should have, share your story in the comments. Not because we want to dwell on the past, but because sometimes speaking our truth is the first step toward healing. And if this message resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because at this stage in life, we deserve peace, and peace starts with protecting what is ours. Family is supposed to be a safe place, a shelter in the storm, but as we've seen, not everyone related to you has your best interests at heart. Some will drain your energy, some will tear down your confidence, and some will betray your trust in ways you never saw coming. The hardest lesson in life? Not everyone deserves a front-row seat to your happiness. Protect your peace, guard your heart, and never feel guilty for distancing yourself from people who bring nothing but negativity into your life, because at this stage you've earned the right to live without fear, manipulation, or unnecessary burdens. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic family member? What was the moment you realized it was time to step back? Share your story in the comments. I truly believe that we learn best from each other's experiences. Let's have this conversation together. And if this message spoke to you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because protecting your peace isn't just a lesson, it's a way of life. Take care of yourself. And remember, you are never alone.